good, and I feel I missed the first meeting because I was traveling, so I'm feeling really good to reconnect. I've been trying to kind of keep tabs, but I don't think anything really replaces these. Well, it's not live, but it's as close to live as we can get conversations. So I share a lot of what Gail just shared. I'm learning. I have many years of program project development, fund development experience, grant writing also, but I think most of what I know comes out of the older models, and I really want to try to take what I know and allow that to adapt to forms and systems and structures that are going to be part of these new models. And so I'm hoping that I have something to contribute, but I also am very much open to how this is going to help shape what I do going forward. So I'm very excited about that and glad to be part of this group. And with that, I will pass to Alan.
All right, thank you. Well, let's see. A lot's going on in life with me, so a lot of transition, a lot of influx things. Let's see. So I'm feeling a little anxious in terms of figuring out the next steps. I already committed myself to moving to Puerto Rico. I have a ticket for this Sunday, but I yet don't have a place to stay. So that's one of those things that is in flux, and we're trying to figure all that stuff out. But I now have a lot more freedom in terms of mobility, in terms of my ability to travel and do the things that I want to accomplish in life. So at least I have that. I'm very excited though about this group. A lot of progress has been made already with the fund, and I'm sorry I couldn't have made it the first time around, but I'm here now. Yeah, I'm just here to learn and see where I can help with my particular skill set. Yeah, I have a few plans for Puerto Rico, and I know that the group itself has more or less expanded. We have plans for Puerto Rico, but I will create it by the rain soon. So yeah, thank you for bringing this together. I will pass it along to how about Max?
Thank you, Alan. Good to hear about your plans for Puerto Rico. Sounds like you're on a real updraft right now. Good luck with all that. I hope that goes well. I'm sure it'll be exciting, at least. I'm feeling hopeful this morning for a couple of reasons. One is they have halted the licensing of a CAFO operation outside of Kansas City for a period of time. They haven't halted it entirely, but just a little hope that maybe we can turn it around and protect the groundwater in the area. So that's definitely a good feeling. And then I'm also, I'm hopeful to be participating in this group because it seems, a lot of the sort of work we're doing in Earth Regenerators in general seems to be creating a viable pathway towards creating a society in which we can really be more fully human. I've had the privilege of traveling a lot and getting to explore consciousness in ways that have exposed really how beautiful things can be. And yet there are a lot of forces that are working against that ability of ours, economically, I think, in particular. So I'm hopeful to be here just to add my voice and my weight to a which isn't much. I'm a pretty skinny guy, but to an effort towards creating a viable pathway to really living and letting other animals live too. So, and I'll call on Stan.
Yeah, thanks, Max. It's a great name. That's my father-in-law's name. And I'm very happy. It's a big relief. My family's quite active in several efforts that Biden was important to. And so that's, bringing the family a lot of cheer. And then the reason I'm here, it really is, sort of a family authentication. All these great ideas, they're hardest to validate in your own backyard. My wife was part Blackfoot Indian. So the indigenous patterns back to Glacier National Park are part of our family summer vacation pattern. You see this is a cabin near the Warm Springs tribe on their fishery, the Deschutes River. And I live down near Willamette Falls, and we're active in the Willamette Falls development for the tribe. And I'm in Portland, Oregon, we're sponsoring a project with the Native American tribes. It's actually sponsored, and they've actually raised $30 million to help with, the greening of the waterfront in downtown Portland. So I'm very excited to be here. It's been a while since I've been in touch with my friends in Detroit, and I was thanking them for counting the votes so carefully. And then I think, I have a lot of Bay Area alumni, Berkeley. So a lot of this is, sort of historic, goes back with Stuart Cowan and the regenerative kind of work, including Portland is one of the test beds for Kate Rayworth's donut economy. And I think what all these, pilots are missing is what Joe's sort of leading, is this authentication through personal trust. And so that's why I'm here. And I'm missing Julian Long because I think there is a lot of opportunity to formalize some new trusts in an innovative way. So my background's in technology and mathematics, limits to growth kind of complexity modeling. But I've been very active fundraising. And I think there's a big need to do infrastructure investing, a lot of big funds available to do that. But the key is getting them to behave. So I was involved in the open source community, and we fought corporate IBM tooth and nail, and they bought Red Hat. So I think it's doable, but I'm looking forward to the leadership on sort of doing this around land and placemaking. So thank you. And I'll pass along to Jeff.
This morning I'm feeling inspired just in some trends emerging globally, or at least in the United States. If you haven't heard, the Cleveland Indians are changing their name, or the Cleveland baseball team. And the Negro Leagues have been recognized as part of the history of Major League Baseball. And little data points for recreation sport, but I mean, a lot of us have been watching broader trends shift over the last several years, and those are some huge shifts. Like it to me, it's signaling that at a deeper level, at least in this country, the consciousness has moved to a place of accepting, facing the shadow and getting open and honest with how we got to where we are now, which, I believe is a necessary step to move forward and through this. So I'm encouraged that some of these macro patterns are emerging. And I'm looking to just continue to be with this process and hold space, knowing that that's showing up is the biggest part of being ready to serve. And while I might not know exactly what I'm going to do or how I'm going to help in this group, I'm here because I know this is this is the front lines for continuing to push for shift and to show the way that we can envision a better world together. So, aho. And I pass to it Lineke, or how do you say that?
Lineke.
Lineke, thank you.
Yeah, hi. I'm feeling very inspired and very curious about what will evolve from this group. Very excited to be here. When I first read about the call to join this group, I had really just joined the Earth Regeneration group, and I didn't know much yet about the work, but I responded to a gut feeling and a feeling of, yes, I want to be part of this. I don't know really what it's about yet, but it feels right. And I am in a place right now where I'm just really looking for ways to contribute to regenerating the earth and to participating in the ecology movement. I've also joined a working group with the Global Eco Village Network recently. I haven't met yet with the group, but I'm hoping that I can somehow pass on information between the different groups and that way collaborate with worldwide networks. Yeah, what else I bring to the group, I hope that will become more clear to me as we progress. My professional background is naturopathic medicine, and I'm a researcher, but I'm currently not doing much with that. I feel much more inspired to do things directly related to working with the earth. I just started a permaculture training as well. Yeah, we'll see what else I can do. But what I hope to get from the group is very much being able to participate in something worthwhile that really resonates with my values and yeah, do meaningful work. Can those who haven't spoken yet maybe raise their hand? Patrick.
All right, thank you, Linika. As Joe made you aware at the beginning, I'm feeling like it's on the downhill. Got over the hill. Got my MBA. The residency this past weekend is done. So this semester, I have one more semester, but it's going to be a lot lighter than this past semester on purpose. So I can actually dedicate more time and effort doing this sort of stuff, which I am very excited about. But yeah, just got to wrap up things by Sunday with everything. There's odds and ends I got to tie up. So in terms of just overall, I'm feeling very, there's a vibration going on. It's very electric. I'm starting to see people in this area. For instance, I just had a call 2 days ago with John Fullerton of the Capital Institute after however many months of not seeing him. I work with him. But this acknowledgement of how business and just people are going to be working together going forward in terms of, he's using the term murmuration now, which we have been using, but basically not trying to conform to any sort of like set structure of how business and collaboration and everything should work. It's more of a network. We sort of go with what's happening, and that's very exciting because I really see these sorts of things popping up everywhere, from Earth Regenerators to Inspiral to the Global Eco Village networks. There's just so much of these starting to weave and interconnect and network with each other. So Linika, that how can you network with others? That's exactly what needs to be happening. So I'm very excited about that, and excited for all the updates in the movement that's gone on in this group, even though I feel like I haven't been a part of it for the last 3 weeks, it's awesome to see. So very excited, and looking forward to seeing what we can come up with. So I will pass it now to Rafaela.
Yeah, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, I know there's noise behind me. I have 2 kids, and my husband is currently working for Panama. I sit in Copenhagen, as you can see from the and from the darkness. And so he's working, and yeah. So how am I feeling? A little bit overwhelmed, I would say, this past few weeks. But super excited for the same reason that PJ was just saying. Now I'm seeing all this serendipity, all this talking about the same thing in completely different groups. So there is really something going on, I hope. As a lot of you, I have a technical background, like I'm an engineer, I did a PhD in sustainability, and then I did life cycle assessment and then circular economy, but always my main job was fundraising and writing grants, and then management and networking and writing more grants. So that's probably why I decided to join this group, because it just happens that this is what I do, even if I hate it. But if it's for a good cause, then I can do it. And well, Sandra, I think she's the last one.
Yes. Thank you, Rafaela. I'm sorry, I'm always the last one. Well, I'm very excited. Actually, it's exactly what Patrick and Rafaela and Stan were saying about synchronicity. How is this happening all over several groups, all over even financial institutions, the big ones. I'm speaking about HSBC and JP Morgan. They are all looking now into regenerative finance, which is very exciting. My background is I'm an engineer also, a manufacturing engineer, but I've been working in environmental areas for 15 years. So my main professional development has been around sustainable finance, particularly for communities, rural communities, I mean. And it's very exciting for me to be part of this group. When Joe started posting and I noticed all these movement around how to integrate pro-social to finance to regenerative. We were discussing yesterday with a colleague of mine that is based in Switzerland. We are now, just as Rafaela is saying, we are now surrounded by the barking of our dogs, the children running around the house while we are trying to do some important phone calls for us, because their important things is different. They want us to dance with them exactly in the spot they are telling us to where to dance. That happened to me yesterday with my nephew. So now we are doing businesses, and we are trying to put in place new businesses with humans. Entities are already aside. Being in our houses is fantastic, because now we are properly moms and dads and aunties and crazy people running around in pajamas to grab a coffee before the next video call. So I'm very excited to be here, and I am very hopeful about this, but also I'm very happy to contribute with whatever I can and whatever it's on my side to do to make this a thriving Barichara fund. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for sharing. And as I said before, and Sandra, you arrived after I'd sort of given the purpose for this activity, which is that we are learning who this group is by learning how each of us is showing up into the group. We're beginning a pro-social process. And what you might notice immediately about a pro-social process is that the group is something you see out of the side of your eye, but not in front of you. You're looking at the other people. You're speaking and connecting with the other people. And when you do this, the group is present with you. And so this is a very important part of being in a group. Now, what I want to do for just a couple of minutes right now is give us a little update about what has happened in the last 2 weeks. And as you've noticed, I've been frantically writing updates and trying to keep everyone informed. And still, it's impossible. There's so much happening. As some of you heard at the beginning, I just got off a call before starting this one with Common Land Foundation about a collaboration that will generate a year of work with them next year, collaborating in Barichara and also in Antioquia, Colombia. And that is so new that I haven't told anyone but you. I got off that call and said, sorry guys, I've got to go. I've got another call. I'm facilitating. See you later. So there's just so much happening. And what I want to do is basically tell you the story in the sequence of a narrative of how it happened. So we had our first meeting, which we had 18 people in that meeting. And we started to just talk about this big vision. We're going to try and raise $500,000 for a bioregional investment platform, create a framework for cooperation and learning between different bioregions. Wow, that sounds big. Luckily, we have a lot of capacity among us, so we can actually take something like this seriously. And what I felt was really important was for this to not be allowed to just be talk. It must be about action. So the next morning, I started a GoFundMe campaign. I just activated it. It took me about 10 minutes to write the description. You know, it was all material I'd already written about before. And we just started. The reason being that there's no time to waste. And we're not going to learn anything unless we're trying to change the systems that we're in. We're going to learn how the systems work and how they do or don't change by changing them. And there's this saying that I love that says, those who believe it's not possible should not interrupt those who are actually doing it. And so we're just going to do this. And I don't remember where that quote comes from, but I love it. So basically what's happened is in the last 2 weeks, we started a GoFundMe campaign. I believe there are 84 people who have donated to the campaign. And we've raised $5,741, which if you convert that to Colombian pesos, is around 20 million pesos, which is actually a lot of money. While we can't purchase land and do some of the larger infrastructure things we want to do with that amount of money, if we didn't raise any more money and just use that, we could probably launch 6 really powerful local initiatives and run them sometime next year. Like that's how much money that is. So we're already doing something transformational. We're already changing the system just by having this. And there's something I did backwards. Oh, hi, who's the little kid here? Rafaela. I wish my daughter was here. I wish she would come and say hello. At least usually drops in on everyone. Is I did something backwards on purpose, which is I chose intentionally not to try to organize a local leadership team for the fund until we had some money in the bank. And basically, there are a lot of projects in Barichara. There's some organization among them. My family is new. We've only been here for about a year. And while we have a lot of friends and we have good relationships with a lot of people, for me to come in and say, hi, I'm the white guy from the north, let me organize you, you can see all the ways that's gonna go wrong, right? That's just very much not the way to go. And so what I felt was needed was to create a gravitational attractor, a dynamic pattern of coherence that requires us to cooperate. And that if we had the beginning of a fund with some money in it, and then everyone's getting worried that the white guy's going to do more colonialism, that this is exactly the moment when there's stress and very in the moment need to create a local decision-making team. And say, no, the way this money is going to be spent is only local people can spend the money, and we need to design an equitable process, and all of those things that are problems become the direct motivation to create exactly what we need to manage the fund. And that's what we're doing now. Hola, Canela, ¿cómo estás? And I have 2-year-olds coming to visit me, calling from the street. That's Maria Canela. Canela, for those who don't know, is the Spanish word for cinnamon. Cinnamon. I have cinnamon right here. So little Maria Canela is walking by calling in from the street. So yeah, so I do have kids, Rafaela. She's just in the street. Really adorable 2-year-old. So what's happened is we have now initiated a process, and tomorrow morning we have a 4-hour design session with a group of us that's forming a team around the design of this leadership team. And all of this kicked in gear when I started saying, wow, we've raised $3,000 in the last 3 days. And everyone's like, wow, that's a lot of money. That could really mess things up here if the money is used badly. And then that is exactly the impetus we needed to form that group. And so now we are doing good permaculture. The problem is the solution. And so this process of designing the framework of pro-social cooperation, of empowered decision-making and governance is now beginning in earnest. And so this is something that's really important. And then the other thing that's happening, to just keep giving you updates, is I realized that what we're doing with this work group is more than a work group. We're more like a research lab. And so I just sort of flippantly decided to say, let's launch the crowdfunding laboratory for regenerative finance. I'm good at making up names. So I just named it, right? I just named it. So that's what it is. Would anyone like to join us? And that's how our group is growing. And that's how I can do things like give a statistical analysis on the money coming in from the fund, and we can talk about it because we're a laboratory, we're a research team, we're working together. And so this is a way of being like a shaman trickster, take the energy around us and turn it into what we need it to be. And you'll notice I play this way a lot, so I'm a goofball. But what's starting to happen now is people are beginning to notice we're doing something different. Another member of our group who's not here today, Jay Wong, he sent me a message saying, Joe, why don't you go do some podcasts and spread the word? That'd be a good way to get people to donate money. So I just put out feelers on Twitter and Facebook, and now I have a lineup of podcast and radio interviews that I'm starting to do. And first one was published yesterday, and so you're about to see a lot of that. So I'm becoming our cheerleader, basically. All of you guys are going to do great work, and I'll be our cheerleader. I'll just go out and cheerlead. Need my pom-poms. And so this is another thing that's starting to happen. And in parallel with all of this, it's now about a month until the first people arrive to do new research here. I have someone coming from Copenhagen University and another person coming from Paris. We're going to start to set up an agroforestry design process for creating native food forests with native trees. So in about a month, we're going to receive our first people from the outside to participate in the design school that I've been talking about for years now. And so this money that is organizing around projects also is coming into being at the time when people are starting to arrive to do additional work. So there's this pattern emerging that is just worth naming. And more people are going to come here in the next year. And all of you are invited to come here if you feel so called to be a part of any of this in the next year. Just reach out to me and we can talk about it. Rachel and I have already been talking about it. So it's in the flow of this conversation. And then the other thing is that we got to a very interesting place with a topographer mapping a piece of land that we've been in negotiations about, where we don't have enough money to buy it. But we might be able to work with the family that owns it to convert it into a nature reserve and have them become the stewards of it. And this provoked a member of our local team, Margarita, who I've written about a lot in our updates, to say, wait a second, there's actually a commercially viable project inside this land. If we can't afford to buy the whole thing and we take about half of it and turn it into a nature reserve and increase the value of the land, then the family will just sell the other half for someone to build a house on. Well, what if we just raise the money to buy it and then we find someone who's going to build an ecological house and sell it to them, so that we could at least have influence over the design of the house and shaping the culture of the kind of person that arrives. It was just this interesting little thought experiment, and I'm going to share more about that in a few minutes after we do the next round of sharing with each other. But what emerged very quickly was a new model of combining development of a commercial enterprise with seed investments from friends with crowdfunding, which we haven't actually decided we're going to do yet. Our local team has a number of concerns about buying the land with money from the outside. and that it might still be better to not buy it and keep it in the local family's hands. So we're very unclear about what the best way to go forward is, but we did throw together a really nice design for how we could basically buy the land and protect it for future stewardship if we felt we needed to do that. So I'm going to share with you that thinking a little bit later in today's conversation. But these are the updates, the main things that are happening. And it's looking promising that with the conversation we just had with Common Land Foundation this morning, that we will probably be a recipient of funding from their accelerator lab, which would bring $15,000 in, and we would divide between here and Antioquia. So it basically doubles our fund from $5,700 to somewhere more like $13,000. And if you add the $10,000 that I was given in donations to try to buy this piece of land we're negotiating, we really have closer to $25,000 if all of that fell together. So what's interesting is we started this process with $10,000 in donations devoted to a piece of land with a limbo, not knowing if we could actually buy it. So the money might be reallocated somewhere else. And now we're working in a space where we have close to a $25,000 capacity if everything keeps coming through, which converted into Colombian currency is actually a lot of money. And so we are on a road to doing something very interesting. And this group really hasn't done much yet because we don't know what the group is. And so we have to figure out what this group is to be able to do things together. And so that's where I will transition from my updates to our next exercise, our next activity, which is going to give us a chance to get to know each other better again. So what I want to do is take about 25 or 30 minutes of our time, which again is up to 2 minutes per person on average, around 2 minutes. And we're going to again go in rounds, meaning one person speaks at a time. And this is what we would like to do. We'd like to have a conversation about our present understanding. This is what I'm asking each of you to reflect on. What is your present understanding of what this group is gathered to do? If you can share your present understanding of what this group is gathered to do, we're basically going to do a mapping process. We're not going to create a visual map. We're going to create a conversational map. We will each see what everyone else in the group sees. And this is a map of our personal understandings. And as we see what each person understands the purpose of the group to be, like, what did this group gather to really do? What are we actually doing? That this is going to give us a lot of clarity about our implicit identity and purpose. And what I want to really stress is the identity and purpose is not what I said as the leader with the power to call this group into being. What you understand this group to be may be a thought I've never had before. It may be very loosely connected to what I thought we were doing. And the richness we will discover by beginning this mapping process is we're going to start to see what we actually gathered to do. And by the way, there's danger here for me as your so-called leader, is we might do something different than I thought we should do. I don't have control over this. This is why it's a pro-social process. We might have gathered to do something more important than what I was able to think of, because all of us together are smarter than I am. And so this is a really important part of the pro-social process. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to ask everyone to think for a moment, what is your understanding, in your own words, of what we gathered here to do? Why are we on this call? What are we doing in this process? So think about that for a moment. And then we're going to go in the same way where one person will speak and then they'll basically pass the microphone to the next. But in this case, I'd like to invite the first person who is ready to answer the question to speak. So whoever feels ready. I already shared what my understanding was in the previous meeting and a little bit today. So I will refrain and I will listen. I'll practice good listening. And I really want to hear from you. What is your understanding of what we gathered here to do? And whenever someone's ready to go, just unmute your mic and start speaking. Or I guess Max is ready.
Okay, I'll go, and then looks like Stan might be ready after me. Yeah, I'm just kind of thinking in the abstract, kind of higher, outside of just Barichara, and Antioquia, and thinking about how we inhabit a global economic system which converts the earth into a kind of wealth that gets sequestered into ever smaller corners of the economy. And so, like, from a high level view, what we're trying to do is to create a hole in the dam that is funneling this money into smaller places such that it can flow back into the earth's benefit from where it originally came. So in a sense, reestablishing a circularity in the way that wealth moves in our economy, whether that has to do with creating separate economies, I don't know is necessarily relevant, because we're still going to be dependent. I see this group as being, we're trying to create an independent framework for an economy and for a culture. But nevertheless, this group is the one in this field that is a bridge to the sort of more dominant global economy. And so what we have to do here, we kind of have to play that game a little bit, despite the fact that I think many of us are aesthetically averse to that game. So it's kind of this, for me as an individual, learning opportunity as well in that sense. So that's what I would offer, and then I'll call on Stan.
No, thank you. I think this is a really interesting process, and I think regeneration is really more of a process than a thing. And I'm really interested in seeing how Joe can create the change, the trust so quickly, because I do believe the network effects that, it's sort of a Dunbar trust cluster. And the hardest part are the first 5 and then the first 15, but pretty soon it's quite large. And the key part is the authenticity. And so for me, I'm really interested in my backyard and passing the test with my daughters and granddaughter. So that's the kind of the process. And then I think the ability to trust the process eventually, it's a feedback. It has to have a positive feedback as opposed to a negative feedback. And so you want people contributing in some sort of way that creates a wealth. And I think we know, pro-social, but also the crowdcasting. Digital infrastructure is very powerful, and we're able to do that now. And we haven't really learned from Tiny Habits how to do it positively. We just had the Twitter king, removed. So I'm hoping to learn especially how to use social media in a more positive way. And then I think the other part is, I think with Sandra, I think there's new economic models that are needed. That trust isn't just, a feeling. There's actually an Eleanor Ostrom version of that we need to share in common. And I think COVID really trained us that it's about trust and those processes for trusting your public health partners. And so I'm very interested in forming those kinds of trusts. We had a lot of work in open source to learn how to do that with the big elephants, IBM and Intel, and it's a very tricky dance. But I think it can be done now with 10 people, 2 pizza teams kind of thing. And what works for Joe and Barichara will work for me and my daughters. So I'm very interested in, test piloting my version of this. And I'm really interested in how it scales. The network effect of trust formation, I think, is really, really different. And I think, reading up on Stuart Cowan and Daniel Christian Wall and Kate Rayworth, they're great theories, but it needs to be a practice, So I think this is the hottest project. That's why I'm here. So Gail, go ahead.
I tend to be someone who thinks very concretely. So when Joe I actually came from outside this group. I was going to help him with writing grant proposals for this foundation, Suenos, I forget the name, that he's setting up to take the money. So initially my thought is this group was just about raising money so he can buy the land. And then as I've been thinking about it just now and listening to other people, I was thinking, well, it really is a bigger view of other ways to raise money, or taking the ways that exist and maybe tweaking them. Because I'm so much in the nonprofit world, and I have been for so long, the ways that exist now for nonprofits to raise money stink. They're terrible. And there's no stability. It's all what the funder wants. We need money to pay the rent, but the funder wants you to spend it on a program. It's like, come on, guys. So this really could be like a research for what are other ways to raise money for projects that are essentially nonprofit, that are not a business, but it's for the good of the world. If anything, it's probably better than a business, and that will provide stability, that where you have money one year, but next year the funder, their stock market doesn't go well, or they decide to fund something else, and your money is suddenly gone and you can't depend on anything. So in a way, this is a great way to play with that and see what we can come up with and create a replicable model that can be used not only for other regeneration projects, but for all kinds of nonprofit programs worldwide. Those are my thoughts.
I suppose whoever is ready to go next, please do.
I'll go. I think I can just sort of coast on what Gail just shared, because that's very much kind of how I am seeing this. This is an opportunity to look at new ways of generating interest, to developing, and it's not just funds. It's really, my experience is that in the end, fundraising is about relationships. And and I think that's one of the reasons why it has become so destabilized in the nonprofit world, is that we're not building those relationships now. Now it's just funding has become very trendy, and people want to get on board with whatever is the trending thing of the moment. And unfortunately, that makes it difficult for those of us who have been in the trenches with organizations that have come in and out of fashion, many times. So in any case, I'm really, I believe that what we are here to do is to look for synergy among the people who are attracted and feel called to this work, to be open to possibilities and to build relationships that will lead to generative activity, including resources to purchase land or to support programs as they become available. So yeah, that's why I'm here. I want to learn. I also want to contribute what I have to contribute, whether it's time or just, lots of love, or any other skill or ability that I have. So that's it. And that's it.
So we've created a nice rhythm of whoever is ready to speak next, just please do. We've got a nice going. So if you feel ready.
I relate a lot to what has already been said about generating new economic models and finding alternative ways to fund nonprofit initiatives other than the established ways of fundraising. A word that has been coming to my attention a lot lately is social entrepreneurship. And I haven't had a chance to deeply look into this yet, but again, I felt an appeal to learn more about it, and it felt relevant to this day and age. Yeah, to learn to generate money in a more creative and a more empowered way rather than depending on donors, really. I also feel that this time that we are living in right now is such a unique time where the urgency for change in every facet of life is so alive in people. And I feel that a lot of people who are able to contribute financially would do so because for many people that's the only way they can contribute. If they are not able to leave their jobs and go and work on the ground, but through donating, for example, they could. But this is just a feeling that I'm responding to, and I feel that this is why we are together to figure out what those new ways are.
So whoever would like to go next. Rachel saying, and I may just show up with lots of love. And I was like, how about love and chocolate chip cookies? Then we're good. uh, Sandra, please, if you're
Yes,
ready.
thank you. So for me, I consider this is a co-design group. We are here to co-design a fund. This fund is, yes, directed to regenerative initiatives, but as well mentioned earlier, this can be used also, like Gail was saying, to some other initiatives. So regenerative initiatives is the focus for now, but it can be replicated for everything. My big interest here is because we traditionally in sustainable finance areas and specifically with financial institutions, even foundations, there is an overlooked of the small scale projects. So basically, the funds I've been trying to reach out with the work I have been doing pro bono this year. During quarantine, I decided to support some rural communities on the way to financial readiness. And we have found that they are requesting at least 100 hectares or so to pay attention to these projects. So all the projects that are small scale, less than 100 hectares, are traditionally overlooked by financial institutions and even by foundations for grants. So I am very interested in how we can put together a model that can be replicated not only for Barichara, but in general. Smallholders have around 70% probably for all the food in the countries, in all over the countries. So if they account for 70% of the food, we are, of course, in a big problem if we are overlooking these smallholders. So that is a key criteria for me to comply with this fund to be able to put together something together, of course, uh, about reaching out and being a bridge between these smallholders and financial resources required for developing. Um, my big aim here, my big interest also is to put together through this group the principles, values, and rules of operation for the fund. I am very excited about what Joe just mentioned for saying that first the money was in place and now the local committee will decide together how to use that fund, specifically mentioning that only local people will be able to spend that fund. And that is very, very useful, not only for engagement, but for properly creating development at the local level. It's traditional that in foundations they have a key agenda, key criteria to be complying with, and that uh, generates some misleading of the true mission of the projects on the ground. So I'm happy to contribute with these rules of operation, with these principles, with these values, but yes, under a pro-social and pro-environmentalist approach. That is my main aim of this group. And yes, I want this to be a demonstrative model for other funds. It's a great approach. I'm very happy about this. I'm very excited about this. As I mentioned, I'm coming from the sustainable finance arena, from big banks and from small scale microfinance institutions. I've been in different sectors. And this is the first time that I am part of a pro-social design. And I'm very happy to have this model to be a demonstrative model for the way forward for a lot of areas, a lot of topics that are now crucial to develop after 7 months or so of quarantine. If we didn't understand anything, then at least we have to understand we can create something together by joining networks, as Stan was saying. So that's my aim with this group.
Thank you, Sandra. And is there someone who would like to speak next?
Hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I've been having issues with my mic and Zoom, so I had to check first. Okay, so I see what present understanding of what this group is here to do is to be a living laboratory for, as I put it, hacking the structures and technologies of growth capitalism to decolonize investment by converting these tools into regenerative post-growth frames. So ultimately, we're a culture design lab working to model alternative ways of being in relationship with finance and community. So that's my understanding.
Accepted. PJ?
Yeah, tried to get all of what you just said was so like well said and succinct. I'm trying to get all of that into this note, and I just halfway through the sentence, my brain sort of short-circuited and I wasn't able to complete it.
Okay, PJ, I wrote it down first and I read it, so I'll just paste it to you.
Okay, sweet.
Drop it in the chat box for everyone.
Yeah, that was awesome.
And it looks like Rafaela wanted to speak and PJ. I'm not sure which is going first. So
Rafael, go first. I'm taking notes.
Okay. Okay, I will not have such an effect sentence. I actually have way more question than answer here. So at the beginning, I thought I was joining to just support you to raise some money because it was a nice project, the one you had there, and you were letting us learning and observing you, and so that was good enough. And I also had this foggy idea that it was just the first one of a long series of many. So now I'm completely, I don't know, I think about it too much. I think I'm starting to dream about it. So I have few elements in my mind that I don't know how to put together. Like there are a lot of networks and a lot of projects that are really close, that are going toward the same direction. And so the first point I have in my mind is how to integrate all this. And also, actually, also if it's really a necessity, because it's also biodiversity, the fact that there are all these different kind of stuff and it's good, they're all going toward a good direction. So why don't we just leave it like that? But actually, as Sandra was pointing out before, and I've seen this in Europe a lot, the big funding and then the very small funding and the different size and how different people, maybe there's someone who just likes to work and they know how to do stuff and they don't want to read a long manual and put together a big grant. And so a lot of money, I've seen this in Italy, we get it for rural development, and they go back to Brussels because we are not able to use it. So this is one thing. I'm sorry, I can't put this thing together. They are still very all over the place.
I'm getting a sense that everyone is learning a lot from your thought process. So please continue.
And then another interesting thing that I have been observing these last weeks. Well, I have this game I put on the blog. And around this board game, I put a lot of permaculture and this guy from the Regen network, the one transforming carbon into carbon share and selling on the market with cryptocurrency. So there is this big group I'm into where they are mainly crypto people, perma crypto people, which is a crazy combination of people, but they are a lot. And so we play the game, and around the table, every time there are a bunch of crypto guys, we start to create currency and multiply currency and transform, and you see these different currencies moving around. And then there are the other, like the normal people, I call them, because I don't really understand the whole crypto stuff. And they're like, okay, I just wanna build this. I just wanna make that. Where do I get the money? What do I have to do? And so there is this big gap. And every time we play, I always see this gap. And I see this gap also in me. And I always think, we are trying to bridge this gap. How do we bridge this gap? So I guess probably my hope for this group is to see a way to bridge this gap. And so even if originally I was thinking about a fund, I don't think that money is necessarily the thing, actually. I'm just, so my question is actually, how do we see this kind of distributed global movement, and how can we coordinate it in a free, loose way that is useful and that it's not, that it doesn't go back into some kind of mind model that is ancient story. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you. I was writing things down, so I have to go back to my notes here because everything that people are saying is something that I need to mull over, and it's contributing very much to how I'm thinking about things. So whatever my thoughts are, they're not my own. But I see this idea of working between being a bridge is very informative, and it makes me think of endomorphic mycelia, so the kind that actually go within the tissues of plant cells. So it's a symbiotic relationship by which the mycelia is in energetic and nutrient exchange with plants, but they actually exist both within the plant and within the soil. And they weave themselves in between the plant cells. And that's sort of a function that I see perhaps something that we're doing here. So it's a cultural scaffold, or as Jeff was putting it, a cultural design lab, between scales and between actors, but not in like a layer cake kind of way. How can we weave ourselves through scales? Sort of one thought. And I see this, Raphael was talking about this gap. So I see this on the one level, there are large funders, large scale organizations, things going on transnationally. And then there are also high level principles like John Fullerton's regenerative finance principles. And then there's like the on the ground work going on in Barichara. And I can see this space as, again, working between those. So how can we create a learning space that's taking these principles and helping to draw in the case studies that Fullerton doesn't quite have yet, because nobody really has done it yet, based on cooperative exchange with what's happening in places like Barichara. And it makes me think about really what finance means. And it's really interesting that this is both pro-social and regenerative finance, as our current financial systems are profoundly anti-social. So a regenerative financial system in some way has to be pro-social. So I think that's what we're trying to figure out here. And so like other people were saying, that's about recycling wealth back in, and maybe this goes between the sort of going between scales idea, but doing so in a fractal kind of way. Because what we're doing here in this group is being reproduced in different sorts of ways with other groups that are overlapping with Earth Regenerators and then regenerative work beyond. So we're all sort of here and elsewhere at the same time. So we're taking those things
over there,
putting them back and forth. Right? Yeah. So what does that even mean to think fractally? And we're talking about, so like questions that we have are how to draw resources in, but actually that's only part of it. The other part is what to do with those in a way that's cycling them virtuously and regeneratively into the projects, so that over time they're becoming more and more self-sustaining and less dependent on external things. What does that look like, and how to articulate that in a way that it's still palatable to traditional type of donors. And what does this mean in terms of like what we're doing here? We're not working for a company. We're not getting paid in a traditional sense. So it's a creative organization outside the market, outside the state. It's kind of commoning, but volunteering itself only goes so far. So how do we create those value exchanges sort of within us? How about your thoughts too? That's sort of it's trying to gel.
and then I think if I remember correctly, PJ and Alan have not shared yet. I'm not sure if I've missed anyone else, but would either of you like to go? Alan?
Yeah, thank you for sharing, everyone. There's a lot that resonates with me in terms of the basic formulation of this group was for the sake of the Barichara Fund, but I love the direction that Sandra is taking this and making this more of a universal kind of framework. I believe, Joe, you did mention this, so I don't want to skip over that. But what I see is that there's a lot of potential with using social media. This has already also been talked about. Social media is something that I'm interested in creating an agency around, so that I can provide services for social media marketing. And so that'll be an avenue that I definitely want to contribute into and raise awareness, raise funds. The youth of today is not the same as the youth of yesterday. It seems like they're evolving at a different pace than we did. We were all very much, I think in a mental capacity, we were all similar, but they now have the technology and the gumption to just go and do it. And so I'm very excited about connecting with them. I see the group in general and all the things that Joe is doing, all the different formulations and all the different branches that have come from it as a, relating back to your podcasting that you're about to do or have already done with Joe with Jim Rutt and his Game B and Proto Bs and all that. I believe this is one of many Proto Bs that are happening on the ground, whereas Jim very much, and he's great in his capacities. I'm not knocking him down at all. He's too good, but he's more of a formulaic kind of capacity, like the Santa Fe Institute, and I definitely want to get involved in that capacity as well. I think there's a place for everybody to contribute, and for those who are able to be boots on the ground, that is their place. We should contribute in whatever way we can if we can't do that ourselves. So I'm super excited about all the things we're doing here in this group and all the other groups, and I'm just very, very appreciative of the opportunity that I somehow stumbled on this almost a year ago, and have just seen the group flourish since then. So thank you, Joe, for everything.
And in full fairness, it's flourishing in part because of Alan's contribution, because we have flourishing groups because the members of the groups are flourishing. This is pro-social. PJ, did you have something you wanted to share?
Yeah, I mean, I would just echo a lot of what has already been said. I see this group as we are prototyping a new model of, like, in my mind, this is the cutting edge of investment and finance. That's the reason why I got involved in this, and the reason why I've been wanting to do this is my capstone. And if we can get this right and it works, or even if it doesn't work, we'll learn lessons. But by prototyping it and then putting it into a format for replication and duplication or adaptation, we can literally transform the way finance and investment done. And I think it's interesting, that quote that Joe said, don't let the people telling you you're not able to do it, and like, don't let them interrupt you. Even the people who are on the cutting edge I don't think they fully grasp and understand what we're actually doing through explanation. And I'm really excited to be able to start to, obviously deploy funds and organize the group in a structure in a way, but also tell the narrative and transform what's going on here into the languages that each of these types of people speak in a way that they can digest it, so that they can see, oh, this is what's happening here. And so, yes, while I do see that this is directly going to help regenerate the area of Barichara and the Rio Barichara and its 15 tributaries in the land around it, I see this as a platform and a prototype that then hopefully will be able to be applied no matter where you are in the world. And that is extremely exciting to me. It's real work. It's on the ground. We're creating the future as we're working on it. So yes, happy to be here with you all and feel blessed to be on this journey.
And everyone did get a chance to speak, yes? I think everyone did. So what I want to name right now is that we've been going in this call for nearly an hour and a half, and the majority of our time has been each of us sharing how we feel to be here. And it's incredibly rich, isn't it? It's incredibly rich. And we're all learning so much about ourselves by seeing the similarities with other people. We're all seeing slightly different ways of thinking that our minds feel resonant with, as if we might have thought this way ourselves, even though we didn't. And this is the pro-social process. So I'm just wanting to name that. And what I'd like to do to conclude our meeting today, to start to bring it to a close, is I'd like to share an investment package that we designed that we do not know if we're going to use, but I think it'll be very instructive to share the thought process and just to show you how we came to these interesting questions and confusions and problems and then invented. And the inventing will all be very easy to understand. There's nothing actually that strange about anything we did, but I just want to show it to you so that we can have a more concrete way of thinking about this. And so the way I'm going to begin is and say that the prototyping that we did is on a piece of land that is drawn within this yellow boundary here. So you see the yellow boundaries around 3 hectares of land, heavily degraded with massive erosion.
Joe is sharing the notes, not the presentation.
Oh, really? I wonder why. I see it on my screen. So you're not able to see my screen.
It's sharing the other screen. Now it is.
Oh, now we see it.
So that's weird. So when I go here, you don't see it? You're not able to see it now?
No, actually, we can see it now. Still.
Strange. Okay.
I think the video is just delayed.
Okay. But can everyone see the satellite image of the land with the yellow boundaries? Okay, so this is the piece of land that we talk about as the project in El Caucho, because El Caucho is the name of the ridgeline that this is on. And what I want to show you here is that this is what the land looks like. The little, the white building and the cement area to the bottom of it is a school. It's a public school that has been closed down because there aren't enough children. So the degraded area below that's downhill, just to the bottom and to the left, is also available for regeneration by partnering with the town of Villanueva. And what I want to really stress about this piece of land is that this is land that we were invited to raise money. We raised some money. We were invited to buy it, but charged a price that's too high. So we don't have enough money. We have about 1/3 of the money we need to buy it. And I just want to show you where it sits on the land and give you a sense of the larger potential of how to think at the landscape scale. So here you can see the ridge line in total. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight the piece of land I was just showing you as part of the drainage basin that it's in. So here's the drainage basin that it's in. If I take this yellow area away, you'll be able to see the degraded, eroded land at the top. And I'll bring it back again. It's right here. And what's really important about this is that the area of this yellow highlighted space is about 30 hectares of land, 30 to 40 hectares. So while the land itself is 3 hectares, we're really dealing for something that's 10 times larger because we're talking about a drainage basin. And if I take the coloring away, you'll also see that a line of trees, there's actually in the drainage basin itself is a line of existing forest, which means we can propagate that forest outward. We can grow the forest back more quickly than building forest where there's no forest at all. And the other thing I want to say is that everything within this highlighted area is owned by members of the same family. It's brothers and sisters who have different farms. There are 6 farms in this drainage basin. And all of the owners of these 6 farms are co-owners of the 3 hectares of land that we're looking at. So we're doing this fractal thing of working on a piece of land that's connected to a larger system, thinking about how to design for the 3 hectares to affect the 30 hectares, while negotiating to either buy this land or not buy it and have the families keep it. And either way, collaborate with the families by bringing more water security to all of their farms below. So this is part of the context. At a larger scale, the piece of land is on the right, the bioparque is on the left, and there's a 500 hectare system of aquifers. So just going up in scale, we're talking about a 3 hectare piece of land that's in this way is connected to 500 hectares of land. So it's just a way of thinking. All I'm showing you is a way of thinking. If you think this way, you can go up and down levels. When we look at the land itself, this is the kind of erosion that's on it. That's our friend Alejo standing there. And we're looking down, he's looking in the direction of the school down below. And the erosion channels are like 7 or 8 feet deep. They're more than 2 meters deep. But inside of them are these areas of natural bushes and grasses. So there's some natural regeneration that's occurring, which is really important because if we stop the erosion, we can accelerate that natural regeneration. Here's another view of the land where you can really see the school. That white building in the distance is the schoolhouse. And you can see it's hard packed clay, and it's very difficult for the roots to penetrate into the ground. So we have to select the right kinds of native bushes and trees to be able to change the soil, because all the topsoil is gone on this piece of land. So just showing you different views of the land to start to get a feel for it. And then here's another view where you're looking up one of the channels from the side. And what's interesting is how much flourishing there is of diverse ground plants in the sediment patches that are built up in these erosion channels. Which means if we started building stone terraces into the erosion channels, they would start to regenerate forests naturally. We would just speed up the process. We'd also slow down the erosion process, which is what's undermining this natural regeneration and stopping it from continuing. So there are very well-known methods for changing the direction of development for this land by basically gathering these big rocks and stacking them into piles to make stone bridges, or stone walls that stop the water from taking the erosion away. So it's a very simple intervention with transformational consequences. And here's a view of the school that's been abandoned, which turns the 3-hectare project into a 4.5-hectare project. Because if we get approval from the town to work with it, then we can do regeneration on their land as well. And also work with school children to do the work, which means we can start community development and cultural regeneration directly on the edge of this land by working with the school. And here's a map that a topographer created where we can see the area of the land, which comes out to 3.2 hectares. And so this is a place that we're looking at, how do we divide it? And as we started looking at how to divide it, the original idea that was proposed back to us from the topographer was the area in red is an area that we might create a nature reserve on. And the area that's closest to this road up at the top, which is what that orange line is actually a place that's relatively flat and someone could build a house there. So if the family didn't want to sell us all of the land, they could actually sell that land later for someone to build a house on. And if we started bringing reforestation to the land, it would increase the value of that land. And this is when a member of our team said, well, wait a second. If we don't have enough money to buy this land outright, but there's a commercial viability to it. Now, we don't actually want to build a house here, but we're just being realistic. Like, could we protect more land if we could influence the social values of the person who builds a house there so they do more of an ecological house? Could we actually design the layout of the entire land with landscaping and integrate the design of the house into the land itself? And then find a buyer who would buy the house. And then we don't want someone to build a house there, but this is way better than someone building a mansion here and taking bulldozers and just cutting down destroying the landscape to build a bigger house, because we have no control over who the family sells it to. That if we bought the land now, which is at a pretty low price compared to the market, that we are confident we could sell this land to recover the money we spent to buy it if we had investors. And then we could help to protect the land in a more holistic way. So this was the thought experiment that came up to us, was the danger of harmful development and the possibility of influencing it to be beneficial development, even though it's a compromise for us because we don't want to build a house on it. So we're being very flexible in our thinking to do this. And then we go back to this idea that Sandra was echoing, that when we create the Barichara Regeneration Fund, we need to be sure that community leadership decides how the money is spent and how it's given to local projects. So in this case, even if we have investors from the outside, we want to be sure the design of this land is managed locally with local contextual knowledge and sensitivity to the local culture and the local ecology. And that's where we come up with this idea. This is our investment package, inspired in part by some great ideas by Jeff when I was chatting with him the other day. It basically looks like this. This is an option of something we could do that would require us to use the money we raised in GoFundMe to do this, which we have reasons to think that's a bad idea and we should use that money for something else. So it's not that we came up with this idea because we're definitely doing it. Just the question was, if we were going to look for investors to buy this land with us and then develop it as a commercial project and a nature reserve, what would it take with the resources we have? And this is what we came up with. If we found about half a dozen investors from anywhere, they could be local or they could be from somewhere else outside, and each investor gives us a 0 interest loan for 2 years, just people who have the extra money that they're able to give it to someone else and get it back later without a financial return. So this is like seed investing. And each investor can give between $2,000 and $5,000 so that we raise a total of $15,000. The total price of the land is $35,000 converted to Colombian currency. And if we take the money we raised a couple of months ago, plus the crowdfunding we've done in the last 2 weeks, we've raised $16,000 in donations. And then we just constructed it this way and said, here's a way that we could design this land as a commercial real estate venture with seed funding, capital, and donations to create a nature reserve, and then sell an ecologically designed house or piece of land for someone to design a house on. And we could actually set restrictions on the buyer of the land to be in accordance with the nature reserve we put there. The house might even be a 30-year lease within a nature reserve, and they don't buy the land. So there's a lot of flexibility where we would have 2 years to figure out the best model, and we'd be able to buy the land at current prices. So this is the model that we came up with. And the reason I wanted to share it with all of you is I wanted to show you the creative process of our existing constraints. And we did what's called bricolage. Bricolage is when you create a solution to your problem only with the things you have available. So the question was, what do we have available? We don't have a viable business model to guarantee a financial return. So we can't ask for investors to expect a financial return. Now, we might gift our investors a financial return if we happen to get one, but we don't want that pressure to compromise our mission. So we'd really rather have friends who really trust us and believe in what we're doing to just loan us the money. It's like reaching out to your uncle and saying, could I borrow $5? You know, you're asking for money from people who already have trust with you so that they can participate in the process. But these are people who are not ready to donate the money, so you're going to get the money back to them somehow. And by doing this, we have constructed a way of making it work if we chose to do it. The only thing we need to do is find the investors. And I was thinking about this late at night 2 nights ago when I couldn't sleep. So I posted on Facebook, I'm up at 3 a.m. thinking about this. Is there anyone who might invest in this project? And I had 2 people who have said that they would commit money, totaling $5,000 of that $15,000, which means we're already pretty close to being able to do it if we wanted to, even though we haven't specifically tried to do this fundraising yet. I just put out one little feeler. So I just wanted to share this thought process with all of you, but also the way we constructed the model, so you could see that we're doing a very different kind of finance. The question of how do you guarantee that we can repay? We have strong reason to believe that this land is under market value for what's happening in the market right now. So like, for example, we have a friend who lives in the drainage basin. And last weekend, she got phone calls from 5 different families living in Bogota that said they have money, this is how much money they have. Could she find them land, sight unseen, that they could buy to build a house on to just get out of the city after COVID? So there is like the floodgates of extractive speculative real estate have been opened, and they're about to destroy this landscape. And so by preemptively buying it in this way, and you may not have noticed in the way I structured the fund that my wife and I would personally be one of the investors. We would put $4,000 of our own money into it. And that was a way of signaling trust to our friends if they put money in, that we were taking the risk together. And my wife and I had a very contentious conversation about whether or not she'd like us to put any of our modest savings into a project like this, or to save it for something that's more about our own security. And we came to a place that she was comfortable with us putting $4,000 of our savings into it, because she didn't think it would jeopardize our security that much. And so for us to enact this, we would enact it together. We wouldn't just ask for everyone else's money, which is a really important part of this. I wouldn't ask my friends to loan money unless unless we were willing to take the risk at the same time. And what we find from that is that if anyone needs to lose money in this investment, the first investor to lose money would be me. I would try to pay back my friends before I pay back myself, which means we would have the ability to sell the land at a lower price than our investors and take the loss because our personal risk was to create a buffer for that loss, while giving ourselves 2 years to find the right buyer. And that the buyer could be the fund and could be the foundation, which means no house needs to be built on it at all, but it gives us 2 years to raise the money. So this was a way to create an open landscape of possible strategies while protecting the land now and locking in the cost of how much it would cost to get it. Now, very few investors know how to think this way. And this is an important part of what we need to do with this fund is we need to practice this kind of sandbox creativity and then show people how we're thinking. Because I'm not telling you that this is the right model. This is the first model we created, but it's a model that would work. And so we're like, okay, we found a model that works. If we need to, we could do this. And so I would consider all of this money part of the fund. The private investors' money would be part of the fund because it's doing the work of the mission of the fund. So this is another thing is we don't want to think of the fund organizationally as a budget that exists within an organization. It is the assets allocated to the portfolio of projects. If you remember from before, the fund is structured as a portfolio of projects. So if we have in-kind contributions from someone else, they're immediately part of the fund because they're investments in our projects. And that's not double accounting, that's just true accounting. The money's in the project, even though we have a debt ledger that says we need to pay it back. So we have an asset value of investment and we have a debt allocation attached to the fund, but all of that is really easy to keep track of. So I just wanted to show this to you to say that we're not fooling around about actually doing this. We're not just having a theoretical conversation. When I started asking my wife if we could spend some of our own money and they had to, basically put my marriage at risk in a sense. What I mean is I had to open up to arguments with my wife. And everyone who's married will know that this is a very important relationship not to have problems in. So if I'm going to open up that space, I have to have a pro-social relationship with my wife to do this investing. See how different this is from normal institutional investing? So I just want to share this. And I'd love to know if there are any questions or thoughts or reactions that people have. Max, you had something?
Yeah, I think this is a very exciting idea. And I just wonder if we could consider also doing something like a timeshare model whereby you wouldn't necessarily find individual buyers, but I mean, just imagining the Earth Regenerators group online, even as it is right now, if people had the opportunity to go and stay somewhere without it being say like a commitment to participating in the ecoversity, but they just want to go and travel and see how it is down there, I think there would be a lot of interest in that. So I could see this as a plan that could ultimately lead to a purchase by the Regeneration Fund, which would then perhaps over a somewhat longer period of time be repaid by people traveling there for short to extended periods of time to stay in earth structures, minimal kind of eco-friendly structures that could be built in the commercially viable area. So that was just a thought that occurred to me. I wanted to share.
Yeah, I really like that, connecting the time pattern of people's interactions from the global network to the local place. I think that's a very interesting way of thinking. So thank you for that, Max. Sandra, please. Oh, maybe Stan and then Sandra.
I really like the place-based sense of value. I think real estate has real, meaning. And then I really like Sandra's focus that there is an indigenous community of place, and they ought to be vesting in their real estate in some way. So I think that's an important Eleanor Ostrom kind of common pooled resources that need to have a indigenous ownership kind of model. And then I like what Max said. I think there are services on top of the land lease, on top of the place that need to be shared, like health or food or meals. Especially meals are distinctive and health is distinctive. And people may choose to use that commonwealth in community-centric ways for activities that are time-based, seasonal, and so I think this idea of a food economy on top of a place economy is a way to think of that local, global, local time, place, time kind of thing. I think this is a really good start, but I think the authenticity of the ownership, like Sandra said, that the commons has been, they've invested. They need to get stock options that are vesting into continued ownership. And I think a bunch of outsiders raising money to buy out their ownership is intuitively, not quite right. I think better to have, the creating of a value stack in some way where people can be participating in a value that they're helping to create. And I think we're visitors or appreciative of their place, but trying to create water services or tree services or food services on top of that. And so locally, to test this stuff, we've been working very, very hard to try to put together public-private partnerships where public is kind of the Eleanor Ostrom model that, the indigenous tribes own some things, and we're trying to create utilities like electric services, water services, transportation services. But food services seem to be really distinctive, that different communities want to have pizza and want to have beer and want to have, different seasonal parties. So that's attractive. Anyway, I like where this is going. I think it will really evolve. And I like the idea of I think there's a fundamental sense of wealth. It's not just fundraising that we're doing. It's kind of wealth creation. And I think that has to do with two things. One is ownership. And you need to vest into that ownership in some authentic, trustworthy way and have options into that ownership. And then the other one is salaries. And I think, the visitor, distinctive sharing in some way in addition to the owning. And so, and I like what PJ said. I think this is a showcase for Main Street and Wall Street, the current, model that's not working, to rehybridize it in a very small 3-hectare way. I like the whole fractal approach to it. So well done, brilliant.
I'd like to add on to that as well. Some of the parrot conservation projects that we're involved with and others we know about have an element of ecotourism, which kind of ties into what Max was saying. The problem with ecotourism is when the pandemic happened, it killed them because nobody's traveling. So you need to have a diversity of things. It can't put all your eggs in one basket, but if they were to take that land and build some kind of sustainable building there with a timeshare kind of idea, it doesn't have to be a timeshare, it could be an eco lodge where people come. Joe, you say there are parrots there. The parrots are part of the attraction. You have eco guides, take them to see the parrots, take them on hikes, take them to whatever other interesting things are in that area, and make it a part of the reserve. And it builds on what Stan is saying as well. So something else to throw into the mix there.
Yeah, thank you. And I know Sandra was
1 o'clock, so I just wanted to say that. And this has been a great meeting.
Yeah, thank you, Gail. And I wanted to give Sandra a chance to speak because she had raised her hand earlier. Sandra, are you still there?
Yeah, okay. So
Beautiful.
I agree with everything that has been said. Gail, there is a huge trend now for cultural tourism. We have some of the communities that are here in Mexico, the small communities, as I was saying. These are ecologists based in 1 hectare with 30 hectares potentially, very similar to the land extension that Joe is mentioning. It's a 1 hectare eco lodge in the center, and it has wellness programs, organic food. All is based in solar systems, and it is all as natural as environmentally friendly as can be. And surrounding this area, this 1 hectare is 30 hectares more that we are looking to provide also finance for agroforestry. And the guys here in the Eco Lodge, they are basing their income in scientific tourism. So as of now, they are working with fisheries camps around this. This is in Baja. I will be there in January. And they are working with scientific tourism, wellness tourism. We have another community in the center of Mexico, indigenous community, looking exactly for what Stan was saying, indigenous ownership of the land, not only with their land, but for properly giving them added value to their land through agroforestry. And this is a very beautiful project we are pursuing and designing already. Um, and my point here is that yes, all of this is beautiful, and I as you can see, I'm really excited, of course. But my point here is something that PJ said at the beginning. How can we express this to funders, to investors? How do we value all the community capitals? How do we put a value in a language that they understand of the work we are doing socially, culturally, politically? Politically, I don't mean that we are all for a party, but politically, our ability to express. So, natural capital, social capital, human capital, cultural capital, all these community capitals, how do we put this into a language that investors and foundations understand? For me, I'm really happy to participate in this, but this is the question I'm still having for this type of initiatives. How do we present this that we all understand in this group? I think, and I am very happy to be part of this group. And how do we share this with others to engage them in what we consider is needing to be done? So, yeah, I'm happy with all that I'm hearing, and that is my question remaining in the parking lot of my mind.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges that we still have is good physical immersion in real examples. There are examples and how to connect people to those examples to really see how they work. This is something that's very important. And one of the larger ideas that that I think is going to be helpful for us in the Barichara, the thematic focus of Barichara, is the idea of having education at the core of what we do. That if we focus on education, education is cultural tourism. Exactly as you said, Sandra, exactly. And to come here and eat the delicious food, to listen to and dance to the amazing Colombian salsa music, and to see how they make their baskets and their clothing. And I mean, it's beautiful. The stuff here is beautiful. I mean, when I look at these baskets that we're using, I'm like, I have this basket made from a plant that some little old lady put this together that lives down the street from me. And I'm like, this is awesome. I love this. And so, so there's really something about education and all of this. What I'd like to do now is just do a wrap up, because our meeting is approaching the 2-hour mark. And I want to just give us a sense of why I invited us to do things the way that we are doing them. Which is, and I think it was Rafaela who named it at one point, of, I thought I came here to do this, but I'm actually realizing now I'm confused, not in a bad way, I'm trying to figure it out, but it's actually something else. And that is, we're trying to do something that's profound. And I don't mean profound in this like, superficial wisdom language way. I mean profound as in you actually have to go deep to do it. We have to actually get to know each other to work together. We have to actually go to the places where things have deep roots, our deep motivations, our deep values, our deep fears, our deep loves. And from that place is where we create. And this is again why cooperation and learning how to have shared identity and shared purpose. I mean, learning how, I don't mean learning how as in none of us knows how to do it, but that this group is new. So this group doesn't know how to do it. This group figures out how to do it by the members of the group becoming a group. And then we learn who we are together. And so here we are 2 hours into learning who we are on the call today. And what we will discover if we keep in this kind of a process is we're going to discover that we have reservoirs of ability that each of us brings that none of us knew we would bring to this, because we had thought of it in a narrow way. And now we're approaching it in an open and deep way. And we're going to discover things that are going to bring us alive, make us feel vitality. And that is where the dancing happens. That's where the magic happens. And so that's what we've done, is we have explored shared identity and purpose while anchoring it to what we're doing with the Barichara Regeneration Fund. So we're not just doing it for the sake of doing it, we're doing it for the sake of becoming a group that can do this work. And so far, there aren't groups that can do this work. And people are going to come back and say, what was your model? We can lie and say the model we created, we'd be lying. It was this investment package. No, what we did was we formed a group. That's what we actually did. We formed a group in service to a purpose. And that's going to really help us as we go forward. And yes, Gail, we will move into action steps in 2 ways. To answer the question just came in the chat box. One is that we will keep going using the Regeneration Fund group and the Barichara Regeneration Fund topic. So we'll be posting things to my networks. And at any time, if someone in this group has an interest in taking some action, first of all, you have full freedom to take whatever action you feel inclined to take. And if you are curious about doing it together with others, reach out to those individuals in this group or reach out to me, and we together will help that to happen. What's beautiful here is we don't have to take action alone. Like I could simply say, here's the GoFundMe link, would you please tweet it? Which any of us could do alone if we have a Twitter account. That's not very interesting. What's interesting is that I had no idea that I wanted to help Stephen with work in his backyard. But now that I do, we're doing something that I couldn't have imagined. And it's like this. This is how we're going to do it. And with that said, I would love to just do a quick closing ritual, very quick closing ritual, which is for each of us to think of one word or a phrase that you're feeling right now at this moment in the conversation. And Helen, you're invited to participate even though you showed up a little bit late in the process. No worries, very glad to have you here. So just, if you're ready with your word, you can write it into the chat box and I will read them aloud. How about if we do it that way? So Stan is saying thankful, full of thanks, energized from Gail. Just type them into the chat box. And be hypnotic voice, elevated, inspired again, intrigued, ooh, empowered, inspired. Ooh, are there more coming? I can feel maybe there are more coming. Hungry for more. Ooh, me too, and hungry for lunch too. See how Well, we're going to discover, see, go, go, go. Yeah, the cheerleading has begun. You see how doing it this way means we're going to have fun. And this is also really important. And I want to just stress that being together with other people in a harmonious way is good. It feels good. And so, so that might be the motivation that carries us through some times of conflict and hardship, is just how good we feel to be together and how we don't want to lose it. And that is actually the glue of a relationship. And then community, yes, Helen, community, thank you. So thank you all for being here. And I'm really like putting the kindling together and lighting a spark to see what fires are ignited. So rather than having clear action steps for right now, while we're still figuring out what kind of a group we are, there's an opportunity to be like popcorn, that as the heat comes around your kernel, it pops open. And as it pops open, you have something that is delicious and ready to be shared. And so at any time you have a piece of popcorn to share, share it. Post it to the group, send it to the email that we've been using to send these meetings, send it to me personally, to someone else in this group, and we'll see what emerges. And this will start to have a pattern of creating coherent action plans together as we see what begins to emerge. And the messy stage is the stage when emergence starts to happen. So you can see PJ is sharing an action step in the chat box. And yeah, PJ, could you put all the emails into the notes for everyone? That's a good idea. And if anyone is uncomfortable with their email being shared, then just let us know. And so with that, I say thank you all so much. It's really an honor to be here. And if all of you would just unmute your microphones so we can all say goodbye together and hear each other's voices. And remember, we're all together. So thank you all. Goodbye.
Bye.
Good.
See you soon.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, everyone. And PJ, did you get all the notes? Were you able to catch the chat box before I close it?
Jeff. Yeah. Jeff,
Cool.
Jeff, if you want to just email me the chat, I can just paste it into the notes doc, and then I will get all the emails in the notes and then share the link again with everybody so that everybody has it.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right, take care. Bye.